Well, good afternoon. Today is episode 4 of Rich's Cancer Journey. If you've not watched the earlier episodes, I'd recommend you visit the channel and see episodes 1 through 3. The purpose of these videos is to provide some insight to my cancer journey, and hopefully that helps people either understand their cancer journey or even a loved one or a friend of theirs that might be going through this. I have to admit that especially when I was younger, I didn't fully grasp what it was like to go through cancer. And you go through it yourself, and all of a sudden you realize that you have your ups and downs, and you'll find you got some amazing friends and people out there that support you. So, really good, really good. And um, yeah, hopefully this video helps. Short review of episode 3. I completed my radiation, was preparing for restaging in fall of 2025. September of 25, I felt pretty good. I was optimistic after completing my chemo and radiation. I was looking forward to getting restaged in the fall and scheduling surgeries to remove my tumors and eventually maybe having some follow-up chemo and then saying that, I beat cancer. That was my attitude. I'd rung the bells and was pretty happy. Took a trip out of town, had an opportunity to do some sporting clay shooting and visit some vineyards up in Palisade, Colorado, and had a great time with friends. One thing I did notice at that time, though, was we had at night I would have some what I thought was indigestion, a little bit of pain in my abdomen and stuff. It tended to go settle down and move on, but I was a little bit uncomfortable, and so that was going on during this time. But it would pass and I'd move on, so things were going good. On my way back home, we stopped by a nice lodge and ordered lunch. A beautiful day, and but I liked my food, but I just couldn't eat it. Just wasn't feeling my best, and really just kind of poked at it, and maybe I was a little nauseous about it. I think my stomach wasn't feeling well, but just overall, that wasn't like me. So anyway, we made it home that evening, and over the next few hours, nausea and some pain increased to the point that it was looking like I was going to throw up, or that sort of thing. So I ended up going to the ER. I remember them asking me my pain scale, and I thought at the time it was a 5 or a 6. I did caution them that a lot of times I underrate my pain compared to a lot of patients, and they seemed to kind of nod, nicely and politely. But so they took a CT of my abdomen, and then the doctor came into my room and said, to the patient with a very high pain tolerance, you've got a blockage at the beginning of your large intestine, basically between the small intestine and large intestine, where the right side tumor was. And she goes, it's no wonder, yeah, I can see you're in a lot of pain. And they got me set up on morphine and got me going so I wasn't feeling that pain. And, I thought it was pretty funny with the, mentioning the high pain tolerance. So she basically said the surgery was beyond their scope, and I was going to have to fly out to UC Anschutz on the Front Range, which of course I'd worked with them before. So they kept me loaded up with morphine, and the life flight had already been used on another plane, so we had to wait for another plane to come in. And eventually, that plane did come in, and I met a couple of wonderful flight nurses. They were very professional and very, they kept the humor up, and we had a nice time. And so I had a flight to Denver, and I asked them on the flight if snacks were available, and they said they didn't have snacks, but they had painkillers. So, we took some of those about halfway through that flight, and again, I don't remember a whole lot after that. I eventually was put into a room in surgical oncology in Anschutz, and it was a beautiful room, had a great view of the Denver skyline and the Front Range. Just absolutely really nice. And many people said it was one of the nicest views in the whole hospital. So I was, fortunate with that. And the nurses were all wonderful there. Um, I could tell lots of stories on that, but we'll keep it short here. So the plan was surgery was scheduled, and the plan was to have the right side tumor be removed, and I'd have an ileostomy bag put in place. For those that don't know, an ileostomy bag is like a colostomy bag. In other words, um, you don't go to the bathroom the normal way, but the ileostomy is further up the chain, so it comes out of your small intestine, and you have a bag, and that was anyway. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I'd have an ileostomy bag for a while. A determination would be made regarding the left side tumor, the rectal tumor, would be removed at a later date. So I went in the operating room in good spirits with an attitude of let's get rid of this tumor. What transpired was certainly not what I expected. In short, the doctor opened me up and discovered the cancer had metastasized to the abdominal wall and small intestine. I had numerous tumors throughout my abdomen, all kind of pea-sized. They wouldn't show up on scans; they were pretty small, but there were lots and lots of them throughout, which happens on this type of cancer from time to time. And at that point, my prognosis changed from curative to palliative. To put it bluntly, my cancer was inoperable, uncurable, and I was a terminal patient now. So he sewed me up, did a minimal, the minimal operation. He did not remove that tumor so that I could heal up quicker. Certainly, I was taken by surprise the next morning because that evening I was in recovery, and so I was in recovery, and then they didn't tell me then, and the next morning he chose to tell me. So about 5 a.m. or so, a doctor came in and basically said, well, I guess you know the news. And I was like, no, what news? And he explained it to me. And well, my initial reaction was word for word, well, that's a bummer. And you get news like this, it really hits you. I truly thought I'd beat this cancer. I truly figured by the spring of 26, in other words, by now, I'd be on my road to recovery, maybe a little bit of follow-up chemo, and I'd be able to say, yep, cancer didn't get me. However, life throws you these curveballs, and from time to time, and we still need to play the game to the end, though. I want to be clear. I know that miracles can happen. This is very important. I really want to make a point of this. Miracles can happen. I understand that. I also know the reality of the numbers for this type of cancer and this type of metastasis. I don't buy the lottery ticket. Somebody wins it, but I know millions don't. So I'm a realist, but we'll be optimistic and keep hoping for the best and living life to the fullest. But I just wanted to make sure that's clear. I know the numbers with my genetic makeup, my type of cancer, the treatments that are available, and the numbers just aren't on my side. So I recovered from surgery over the next few days, enough to be discharged. Then I traveled home. And one thing I do need to note after I got home was I need to apologize to my wife, Judy. She's had 3 children, all with C-sections. And I never knew at the time that abdominal surgery was as painful and as tough to deal with as it is. I just didn't know what I didn't know. So I certainly have a better understanding of it now after this abdominal surgery. I know there's a lot worse surgeries to go through, but this was a handful. Um, in regards to recovering, um, I now have an ileostomy bag, and that was a learning curve. It took me 2 to 3 weeks to figure out the best way to handle that. And although they gave me some training, I didn't have an expert here where we live. And you know, remember a time when I was younger that I would have thought that I'd never be able to handle something like an ileostomy bag or a colostomy bag, something like that. But I just want people to know that you can adapt, you can learn, and this stuff becomes routine. Is it an inconvenience? Yes, it is. But can it be handled and can you still live life? Yes, you can. So I may sometime make a specific video on things like that. We'll see. There's channels out there that specifically specialize in that, so I may leave it to them as well. Um, but just suffice to say, you can adapt to anything and continue to live your life. It certainly is manageable. The next video will be a little more upbeat. I'm going to cover some bucket list items and work on that, and maybe some bucket list trips I've taken, and just the journey of my new reality. So we'll we'll end it for now, and I'll see you on the next channel. Thanks.